Salutations from space and aloha from Earth, friends. This is Gemini Brett of More Than Astrology, here to speak about the alignment of the day, perhaps the week, a couple months. Mars is stationing retrograde in some hours' time. In the sign of Aquarius. This is a very rare place for Mars to retrograde. Last time Mars stationed retrograde in Aquarius was 1971. Why is this a rare place for Mars to retrograde? Well, what is a retrograde? All right, for an outer planet, the metaphor you've experienced is passing a car on the highway. So you know when this happens, though that car is still moving forward, it seems to you as if it is moving backwards during the passing. And this is the experience of Earth. It was the car passing Mars. So we're both moving forward. Fortunately, that doesn't ever stop or things would get really trippy. But as we are passing Mars, on Earth, we witness Mars stopping, turning around, and moving backwards through the constellations and the signs of the zodiac for a time. For Mars, this is about 2 months, almost exactly. Mars's cycle with the sun, from Earth's point of view, is about 2 years, somewhere between 24 and 26 months. It changes. Mars's orbit is incredibly chaotic. Well, I'll just say volatile, or let's try to bring that into a word that doesn't seem so extreme. Eccentric. Mars's elliptical orbit, and all orbits are elliptical, is extremely elliptical. And so Mars doesn't do things according to some set schedule. Well, I guess it is a set schedule, but it's just a very eccentric one. So Mars in this elliptical orbit at times is close to the sun and at times is far away. The astronomical terms are the perihelion. This describes a planet's closest approach to the sun. And at the time of perihelion, a planet is moving most quickly, closest to the sun, you see. In our time, the very early degrees of Pisces hosts Mars's perihelion, and therefore Mars is fastest in late Aquarius, early Pisces. And because Mars moves most quickly there, it's more challenging for Earth to pass Mars by, you see. So it's very rare for Mars to station retrograde in these signs of Aquarius and Pisces. And it also means that when we pass Mars, when Earth passes Mars, in these signs of Aquarius and Pisces, Mars being closest to the sun in his own cycle is closest to the Earth. Now, any Mars retrograde or Jupiter, Saturn retrograde, whatever, in fact, any retrograde, including the interior decorators, Venus and Mars, means this is the closest approach of Earth and the other planet. But with Mars at perihelion, it's especially close. In 2003, Earth's pass of Mars in the sign of Pisces, so close to his perihelion, his closest approach to the sun, brought the closest Earth-Mars relationship in almost 60,000 years. So Earth closest to Mars means a very bright, red, beaming Mars. And this one that starts today, this Mars retrograde, which in about a month's time, when Sun, Earth, Mars are perfectly aligned, will bring the closest approach is since 2003 the brightest, closest, really reddest Mars. So it's something to get out there and see. It's happening pretty late right now, but you will find with Mars stationing retrograde that Mars rises earlier and earlier every night. In the middle of the retrograde period, Mars becomes midnight star. This is the term that my friend Adam Gainsbourg brought forth. Because just like a full moon, when Mars is opposite Sun, and this is the very middle of Mars's retrograde period, Mars will rise at sunset, set at sunrise, and therefore culminate in the middle of the night, midnight star. So we'll find between now and a month from now, Mars rising earlier and earlier every night until the middle of his retrograde brings Mars's rise at sunset. And I really encourage you to go experience Mars sentiently, physically, embody this, go witness Mars, look at this amazing blood red, bright being. I mean, Mars is just about as bright as Jupiter right now, which many would teach is impossible, but no, it's not. And you can go see this in space with your face. And I would go outside and sit with Mars and bring some intentions, maybe bring some offerings that are married to that intention. And what might that mean? Let's get back to that. All right, so to the charts. Let's look in Astro Gold. Here's the moment of the Mars retrograde. Well, it's actually just a little bit after. This is cast for Seattle, Washington, where I currently sit at home at 2:05 p.m. today. Tuesday, Mars's Day, June 26th, 2018. Mars is stationing retrograde in the 10th degree of Aquarius, very close to the south lunar node. They've got a lot of points on here. Asteroids, this is Vesta, currently aligned to the degree of galactic center's projection to the ecliptic, to the zodiac. 27th degree Sagittarius. This is Black Moon Lilith, very close to Pluto right now in Capricorn. Here's Eris, the mythological sister of Mars in the sign of Aries, where she's been for your whole life and a lot longer. Eris with Juno right now, asteroid goddess of relationship, we say. Pallas Athena in the sign of Cancer, opposite Lilith and Pluto. Ceres in the penultimate, actually the ultimate, the last degree of Leo, very close to the bright royal star Regulus, the heart of the lion. So I'm actually going to tune this thing down a little bit. We'll look at the planets in Chiron. And this isn't set to Seattle's ascendant, but rather it's a natural zodiac wheel. What does that mean? That means a whole sign chart with Aries on the rise. This is Earth's houses, the signs are, and that's maybe a tale for another time. So Chiron's only rising, as we see in this chart, wherever on Earth 0 Aries, or really 2 degrees and 23 minutes Aries would be rising, okay? But this gives us kind of a global view. In mundane astrology, folks will often cast charts for like Washington, D.C. or capitals of other countries, but the natural zodiac kind of releases us from an idea of surface location. The houses reflect the surface. The signs reflect the center of Earth, where we are all connected. So 10th degree Aquarius retrograde. And we see Venus here opposite in Leo. Venus and Mars were exactly opposite, Leo, Venus, Aquarius, Mars at June solstice, amazingly. And there's a lot of powerful alignments on this chart. So I want to honor the whole chart and look at it where Mars is coming from in his relationship to some of the other planets. Like you can see that Mars is currently in Aquarius squaring Jupiter. And also that because Mars retrogrades today, 9 degrees, 13 minutes Aquarius, he does not perfect the square to Jupiter. Got close, pull within about 4 degrees, hit the brakes to turn around. Like we're not ready for that meeting yet. In fact, we'll see in a bit that the Mars-Jupiter square won't happen until Jupiter has ingressed Sagittarius. So Mars will be in Pisces, to very close to his perihelion when that square perfects. So I'm very interested in seeing that at the time of Mars station retrograde, not only is he so close to the south lunar node, but it's the same day as Sun opposite Saturn. And there's a lot going on here. So I say alignment of the day as the title of this video here live on Facebook. But really, there's always alignments, right? Wheels within wheels. And part of the way that we can connect to the essence of this Mars retrograde period is to look at how the other planets are relating, how the other notes of the celestial symphony are connecting through harmony and, well, sometimes discord and sometimes more of a consonant resonance, yeah? Let's go over to well, actually, we'll go to Intrepid software because it just lets me play around really quickly with time and snap back and forth between these different alignments that I want to show you. I cast this chart for Tehran, Iran, not really for any political expression, but mostly because there at the time of Mars' station retrograde, which will be ahead of where I am in Seattle on Wednesday, June 27th today, locally there in Iran at about 1:34 a.m. Aries is on the rise. And so I can use a whole sign chart and get this natural wheel that we were looking at in the Astro Gold software. Something that Intrepid doesn't allow me to do, so I have to kind of trick it by finding the place where Aries is on the rise. And in Tehran, it's actually the 20th degree of Aries, but I can make a whole sign chart and we see a natural chart wheel. So just to let you know, that's why I chose this location. I'm not trying to make any statements. But I'll go actually first. Let's do this. Mars retrograde 9 degrees, 13 minutes Aquarius. And Mars will go direct at 28 degrees and 37 minutes Capricorn. Okay, so let's kind of bookmark these numbers. 9 degrees, 13 minutes Aquarius, which will be easy to see because I'll leave this Mars retrograde chart on the inner wheel. And then we'll play with transits. So one of the questions is, when did Mars first reach this specific zone of the zodiac 2837 Capricorn? Because we say that this is when the shadow period of Mars retrograde began. So let's go back in time a little bit and I'll find when Mars first reached 28 degrees 37 minutes Capricorn. Let me set that up before I lose the number. And I'm just going to go back a few months and we'll hit that button. And I didn't go back far enough, it seems. Hold on a second. Okay, May 12th, 2018. So this is when Mars, who I'll go back a few days before, and we'll just see, like, here's Mars with Pluto, April 25th, 26th. And then Mars gets to this very specific degree of 28 Capricorn, really 28 degrees, 37 minutes Capricorn on May 12th. And why this is said to be the shadow of the Mars retrograde is because Mars will retrograde back to that degree. to station direct. Okay, so if we just look at the zodiac as a line, and when we do, we're speaking about the ecliptic plane. This is the relationship of Earth and Sun. So Earth's orbit of Sun is the ecliptic plane. We witness that from Earth as the curve that the Sun travels through the constellations and the signs of the zodiac. But Mars is on a different plane. Mars's path about the Sun is not the same as Earth's, and that's an important thing. We're going to have a look at this. But first, let's just honor this kind of in this linear way, in this respect of zodiacal degree, or what we say is celestial longitude. May 12th, Mars reaches 2837 Capricorn. Mars stations retrograde today, June 26th, and that's it's 2:04:17 p.m. Seattle, Washington, where I sit. Right, be a different time for you, but for all of us, it will be at 9 degrees and 13 minutes Aquarius. Mars will find opposition and receive the opposite ray from the Sun in the very middle of his retrograde period on July 26th, exactly 1 month from his station, at 4 degrees and 9 minutes Aquarius. So the Sun at 4 degrees 9 minutes Leo. And you can see the Sun at that time is so close to the North Lunar Node. So if you're hip to eclipses, you know that means that we're in eclipse season. We'll look at the triple eclipse season before we finish here. But I'll just show you that you can see the moon, very interestingly, like very close to that degree of Mars's shadow that began on May 12th. And then there's a total lunar eclipse, a blood moon, on July 27th. So close to retrograde Mars. All right, Mars stations direct on August 27th, almost exactly 2 months after today's retrograde. And then Mars will return to the zone of the zodiac where he stationed retrograde today on October 8th. You can see here Mars back to 9 degrees 13 minutes Aquarius, now direct, and I'll just go to the next day, 9:40, right? So he's past that place. So the idea of the shadow period of a retrograde, it's not just in the case of Mars, the 2 months time of his retrograde period. It's 2 months in a day, June 26, 2018 to August 27, 2018. But there's this longer shadow period that we speak about, which is when Mars gets to the degree where he's going to station direct, comes back to that place, and then finally the shadow ends when he returns to the degree where he did station retrograde, right? So he's got this kind of backwards and forward motion within this specific degree of the zodiac. So you can look at that again. It's May 12th. Go back again. So May 12th, 2018, Mars to 2837 Capricorn. Retrograde today on June 26th, direct at 20 degrees 37 minutes Capricorn on August 27th, and then returning to the degree, or the very degree and minute of the retrograde on October 8th. So between May 12th and October 8th, Mars is traveling through these degrees between 2837 Capricorn and 913 Aquarius, and seeing all of those degrees thrice, right? And he's coming through direct, retrograde, and then direct again before he moves along his course. So Mars is retrograde travel through the zodiac, June 26, 2018 to August 27th, 2018. The middle of that period when the Sun opposes Mars, July 26th, 2018. But we can also speak about this longer period of May 12th to October 8th. So what does Mars retrograde ask of us, bring as an opportunity for our own growth? And what does this mean in the sign of Aquarius? And what about the truth that Mars is stationing retrograde on the same day that Sun opposes Saturn? What about the truth that Mars is stationing retrograde shortly after receiving an ray of opposition from Venus and Leo at June solstice? What does it mean that Mars is stationing retrograde before perfecting the square to Scorpio Jupiter? Wheels within wheels within wheels. What does it mean that Mars returning to this degree on October 8th, where he stations retrograde today, will also feature Chiron, not in the Aries sign where he is today, but back in Pisces. Wheels within wheels within wheels. All right, and loops. Because there's not just longitude, zodiacal degree. Our charts are, in a sense, very two-dimensional in this regard. We're looking at the ecliptic and the zodiac based upon the Earth-Sun relationship. And we should, because we're Earthlings. But planets have latitude as well. They have their own course. And it brings us into the beauty of retrograde loops. Planets don't travel on a line. They do these amazing different ways of retrograde play. So I made a video this morning of this Mars retrograde loop, which is really, the loop is half retrograde and half direct. So let's look at that together, and we'll listen to the amazing flute of John Dumas. So I guess I'll speak a little bit more about John, actually, who's a wonderful Aquarian being, after we check out this clip together. So let me cue that up. And I just want to mute myself, hide my video for a second, and we'll watch this together for about a minute. The amazing flute medicine of John Dumas. I want to show you John's webpage real quick. So you can find John at johndumas.com. It's an amazing brother of the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School, very powerful musician. And I found this photo on John's website, which I wanted to show you. This is this 4-chambered flute It's what we were just listening to, that John invented, like a good solar Aquarian being. John actually was born with Venus conjoin the sun, the exterior conjunction of Venus and sun in the sign of Aquarius. Be very close to the degrees of the coming blood moon. So I will look forward to seeing what this will do for John and the music that this amazing creator will produce at that time. So John invented this 4-chambered flute where he can play 2 different drones and can play harmony on the flute, right? He's playing like he can play 4 different flutes simultaneously. It's a genius Aquarian invention. And Aquarius is very inventive, right? Why? Why do we relate Aquarius with technology and invention and innovation? And how does this Mars retrograde propose to play with our innovation and our inventiveness? So why innovation? Why change at all? And how does Mars participate? We often speak about Aquarius as the game changer. Why? For the sake of humanity, a love for, I'll say, the evolution of the species, but most importantly, the evolution of consciousness. And there's a very important, I feel, initial stage of the Aquarian play that we don't often honor enough. Aquarius is a fixed sign. Aquarius is an air sign. Yeah. So what is air? Air ups. And air is consciousness. Well, really all elements are consciousness. Air is mind, thought. And I like to say capital M, capital T there, because I think we so often hear in modern spiritual suggestions that we're meant to get out of the mind and get into the heart. But the mind is a beautiful thing to waste. And Aquarius is the beautiful mind in many ways. Fixed sign. Why fixed? The fixed signs are the middle signs of the seasons. In the northern hemisphere, Aquarius is the middle sign of wintertime. It's when the nature of the season is fully fixed in. It's actually, in another way of calendar play, seasons don't begin at the turnings, the equinoxes and solstices, but rather in between at the cross-quarter degrees. So the cross-quarters are halfway between equinox and solstice, or halfway between solstice and equinox. The middle degree of Aquarius is just between December solstice and March equinox. In the northern hemisphere, this means the middle of winter. Yeah, so December solstice for the northern hemisphere brings the longest night, and therefore the birth of the sun. Yeah, when days begin growing longer, but it's cold. And Aquarius time, due to what the scientists call seasonal lag, is even colder. And this is northern hemisphere, right? We always want to bring the southern hemisphere balance, where Aquarius is the middle of southern hemispherian summer, right? So the tale of 2 hemispheres helps us honor the truth that the 12 signs are actually 6 pairs, polarity pairs. And Aquarius and Leo are a balance. I like to say that they are 2 sides of the creative impulse. And one side, Leo, is about the fire, the roaring flames of inspiration, whereas Aquarius is the imagination. Aquarius in that regard speaks, I think, in a sense to the truth that it's easier to write if we're sitting amongst a crew of writers. You know, the library, it's like everybody's and it really moves, it really goes. Working in community at the coffee shop, for example, can really help the flow when we're feeling blocked in a way. So the inspiration comes, really, it's creation creating through us, but it comes from within the inner flame, where imagination, it's like, you know, the antennas into the collective. And Aquarius is a very collective sign. I've heard this polarity also. I was speaking to my friend Rick Levine one time about this idea that the 12 are 6 pairs, and that my favorite example to share in that regard is Libra and Aries, because you put them together and it spells libraries. And I love to say it's the books of relationship. It's much more than that, but Libra as a specialist in othership, and Aries in selfness. Not selfish, that's very important, selfness. And we need selfness in balance with othership to come to the middle way of right relationship. The middle way is Earth for all of these 6 polarity pairs. So I asked Rick, you know, what is Leo Aquarius? What is the one thing that Leo and Aquarius are the 2 sides of? And he said, love, you know, Leo, the burning love for self, confidence. And Aquarius, the love for humanity. But then he stopped himself and he said, well, you know what, actually all of the 6 pairs are about love. And I brought in this kind of idea of creation through inspiration on one side and imagination on the other. And he said, yeah, I like that, but there's more to it. Another Aquarian being. Anyway, I think it's a really wonderful play to get into these archetypes by honoring that with their polarity pair, they are 2 sides of one thing. And then the exploration is, what is the one thing? Like, what is the one thing that Taurus and Scorpio are the 2 sides of? That Gemini and Sagittarius are the 2 sides of? That Cancer, Capricorn are the 2 sides of? Virgo, Pisces are the 2 sides of? And so one of the ways that I play with the Leo Aquarius polarity is creation through inspiration on one side and imagination on the other. And there's many, many gateways into knowing these signs through that investigation of polarity, balance, and the middle way. And so I travel this branch just to honor this tale of 2 hemispheres and the truth that Aquarius speaks to the middle of winter for the northern hemisphere, but the middle of summer for the southern hemisphere. And I do that so that I feel more free to get into this northern hemisphere transmission of the Aquarian mysteries. Okay. So from the northern hemisphere's point of view, Libra is the gateway into autumn, you know, in the day-to-year correlation, which is something that we can do, because both the primary motion, the spin of Earth, the daily rotation, and that's about the houses, and the orbit of Earth, this annual motion, this secondary motion, they're both committed to the same cycle of yin and yang. Sunrise is like spring, midday like summer, sunset like autumn, midnight like winter, you see. So Libra, where the sun is due west of the Earth's center, and that's a trip for another time too, but it's very much like the West. It's very much like sunset. The most beautiful time, where we might reach out for someone's hand to hold, even if there's nobody there. A time of the goddess. If you've been out at sunset recently, you'll see Venus shining, looking back at you, beautifully demonstrating as a Leo light this time, why she is the goddess of beauty. Yeah, we see Venus either as morning star before sunrise or as evening star after sunset. These times that are shockingly beautiful. And then it starts getting a bit darker. And I'm always heading out at that time to engage with my own sky practice. And I love seeing how people were out there holding hands on the beach in West Seattle. And then they're like running for home. It's getting dark. We need to eat. We need to go somewhere safe and warm. The younger couples on the beach, on the benches, they like start making out because the lights dim. We get into this kind of Scorpio energetic. And then it's darker. And if you want to stay out, you might want to start a fire. Right, so we move into that kind of Sagittarius nature before the middle of the night. We're in the state of your correlation, at least from a Northern Hemisphere point of view, and in a sense from the whole world's point of view, and that's another trip. But we're getting into this place where it's starting to get really cold and there's no sign of light anymore. So you might want to start a fire. And Sagittarius brings us into this truth of why. Or the why of truth. And let's start a fire so we can make it through the night. And in a sense, you know, what do we have to do to get through? Why does the sun set? Why does the winter come? What is the reason for the seasons? And will we make it through the darkness? Will we make it through the cold time? So, on some senses, we might want to see how other cultures have always done this thing. We might want to explore different spiritual practices to engage with the winter of the soul. And it's interesting, again, this is Northern Hemisphere, but if you look at the traditional domicile lords, I struggle with that language and like to use that weird voice when I speak in the old vocabulary, but Jupiter traditionally is said to rule Sagittarius and Pisces. And from the Northern Hemisphere's point of view, the last day of Sag, the last minute of Sagittarius is the beginning of winter, and the last minute of Pisces is the end of winter. So you see Jupiter in this regard, Northern Hemisphere, holds the winter, where we then engage with Saturn, traditionally Capricorn and Aquarius, before Pisces comes around and the return of Jupiter's energetic through this idea of dispositorship. So Jupiter on the way in says, you're going to make it through. This will be good for you. Go into the soul, find winter in you, you know. And on the way out, Pisces, here comes the light. You made it. Good job. And in between, we get to play with Saturn's ways. Beginning with Capricorn, where there's not really time for why anymore. This is about what, how do we make it through? So Southern Hemisphere friends, I would encourage you either to think about the polarity pair in the middle of your winter, or to think about the middle of the night. Yeah. So we want to be safe. We want to have structure, shelter, yeah, so we can engage and sleep and find our way through rest to the dream, which might be symbolized by the returning of the light of vision and maybe some of the Pisces energetic. But I like to speak about Capricorn as leaders when we need them. So again, Northern Hemisphere projection here, but it's like, you better choose the right cave to make it through the winter, the right tribe that will help you survive. And yes, you might have to lay down the law if somebody's stealing the food that you're rationing to make it through in the middle of the night or whatever it may be. Well, when Aquarius comes around, Northern Hemisphere, it's even colder You know, there's no going outside in your survival cave. And I like to think about how do the innovations come in? I'm very fond of saying that true revolution must come from revelation. And all of this to set up this idea of Aquarius stage 1. So here we are in this cave, making it through the dead of night, making it through the middle of winter time. And I realize perhaps that wonderful being I've been attempting to make eyes with across the way in the cave is not looking back, and that's not going to happen. I'm sick of playing checkers with this crew, you know, whatever. And so what can I do? I can't go outside. I go inside. My mantra for all of these fixed signs, like Leo and Aquarius, Taurus and Scorpio are the other two, is fix yourself to fix the world. They are signs of self-empowerment. And therefore, they are the signs that our culture is most designed to cast aside. And I feel that this essence of fix yourself to fix the world is tuned for these 4 fixed signs according to their element. So that Aquarius, fixed air, is about fixing my consciousness. And so I think this word fixed, it's sometimes misapplied in the idea that this is some kind of stubbornness or unmoving. I mean, that's just not at all true of Aquarius, which is an amazingly fast time. At December solstice, 0 Capricorn, the sun is stopped. Solstice means the sun stops. It's reaching its southern extreme, rising and setting as far south of east and west, respectively, everywhere in the world. And then begins its northern quest. And very slowly so in the sign of Capricorn. When we get to Aquarius, you can see this on the horizons. The sun starts moving really quickly day after day, rising further and further north of its southern extreme and setting further and further north of its southern extreme, finding its way back to cardinality, which always happens with the cardinal signs. Yeah, at equinox time, 0 Aries or 0 Libra tropical, the sun rises due east and sets due west. So Aquarius is a place where we're picking up speed. But if we're in this cave and can't go outside to run around, how do we do that? How do we find our way to be fast without moving? There's this wonderful thing from Dune, the book by Frank Herbert, who was actually a professor here at the University of Washington, made into an interesting film by David Lynch. Some pretty Aquarian beings, these. David Lynch actually left that film too because they were doing it in a way that did not fit his image, and the producers were demanding this commercial thing probably, and he's like, I'm out, right? And I love that too in this regard. But, you know, Mars likes things fast. For me, when I play with the Venus-Mars polarity, I really look at the orbital paths, not only in the truth that Venus's dance with Earth and Sun is very harmonic, very fixed in a way. And you've probably seen the amazing pentagram that is formed between the 5 kisses of Earth, Venus, and Sun during the course of 8 Earth years, 13 Venus years. Mars, very volatile, very eccentric, does not draw some star. There is, of course, a pattern. But Venus also, her orbit is interior to Earth's, right? She's between us and the light. And Mars, exterior. We even look at their glyphs. Venus, the circle of spirit, over the cross of matter. And for Mars, traditionally, the glyph, the cross of matter, over the circle of spirit. And for me, they speak of the inhale and the exhale. That Venus is about inhaling spirit into matter, into the body. And when balanced, and the earth is the place to find this balance, Mars will now show us the gift of the exhale of sending matter back to spirit. And it goes outward, out through the Martian zone, through the belt and Jupiter and beyond, out to space. So Mars has this tendency to help us create expression, the exhale, the outward energetic. And yet we say this about retrograde times. They ask us to go inside. So that's not necessarily Mars's standard trip. And it's very fascinating that at this time, with Mars so close to perihelion, in his own orbit, he's moving super fast. But from Earth's perspective, as we're passing that car on the celestial highway, it appears as if today Mars stops. He's been hitting the brakes and slowing down to shift from drive to reverse. And in the passing idea, there's a point where that car just seems exactly stopped. And then it seems to be moving backwards, right? It's an optical illusion, but that doesn't mean we're meant not to connect to its encouragement for growth. The growth, however, is about rewinding, reversing in a retrograde, and getting inside. So at this time, Jupiter's retrograde, Saturn's retrograde. Many of these beings, Pluto is retrograde. And coming soon to a theater called You, we will have a whole bunch of the planetary crew traveling backwards simultaneously. Moonwalking. Well, perhaps not. I mean, Moon and Sun are the only two that can't retrograde. So Michael might have named that dance wrong. This would be the Mars walk. And yet this is not really how Mars wants to walk. Mars wants to run forward. So the Mars retrograde time, and especially in Aquarius, the sign that's very fast in many regards, for all of us, Aquarius brings the time of the zodiac's motion, bringing it to speed. In the Northern Hemisphere, Aquarius is a sign of very short ascension. It rises very quickly. You'll find that Northern Hemisphere beings don't, well, there's signs that are more statistically possible for the ascendant. So we often teach, okay, it's a 24-hour day. There's 12 signs. They each rise in 2 hours. Wrong. Aries and Pisces, where I live in Seattle, rise in just about 1 hour, whereas Virgo and Libra rise in about 2 hours and 45 minutes. The extreme difference between the signs of so-called short and long ascension, or the crooked and straight signs, it becomes more extreme with latitude, with distance from the equator. And like many things of tropical astrology, at least the astronomical situation, are reversed between the hemispheres. So Aquarius has this speed in many regards also. Aquarius is also Northern Hemisphere, a time where, having come from the lowest altitude of midday sun, I could say, or the lowest altitude of the ecliptic of the zodiac, starts going back up towards the heavens. There's a very outward energetic, not only to the air sign in general, but very much in this way of the Aquarius intent to head to the heavens. Well, that's a hard thing to do when you're inside your survival cave, you see. So for me, stage one is about going within. It's a mindful, but I like to describe it in this way. Aquarius stage 1, the hermit in the cave, meditating to the point of rainbow body projection into the eagle eye overview of the galactic Netherlandia. It's like the blast off. But that happens not by running away from this moment, but rather getting into it. Again, true revolution must come from revelation, or it's just not real. The Aquarian intent to change the world will often convince us to, go to the streets and bring these revolutions that may or may not necessarily vibe with higher truth. So taking that time to sit, how do I want to change this world? Why do I want to change this world? What type of change is actually effective? So that we're not just cutting off heads, not seeing that we're being led by the same force that we're fighting. Then that which we revolted against just takes over, wearing a new mask once again. So that hermit in the cave, that going within, the first thing the oracle says is know thyself. If you want to know the mind of the all, and I feel that astrology in that highest expression is this journey into connecting to higher mind. Now that's a weird word, mind, but let me just say instead the one. I'll express that in a mystical, hermetic fashion. But Hermes does speak about the one mind and the one thing, and I'll just extend that as an invitation for your own exploration should you choose to explore. Aquarius wants to explore. It's a different type of exploration than Scorpio, which we often relate to the way of the detective. Scorpio, fix sign, fix yourself to fix the world in the ways of water, feelings, the art of the heart. Well, Aquarius is the art of the air. For art is the bridge between science and spirit. So this intent to get up and out, I feel, is only truly balanced if we first go down and in. And this, to me, is the great gift, opportunity that Mars is presenting to us now. He says, full speed ahead, wait a second, I'm gonna hit the brakes, turn it around, and bring an opportunity for you to go within, to truly know consciousness, your consciousness, to connect to the higher consciousness. Because once we go within and rise in our own expansion, we can connect to that higher place and receive the vision now that we can bring back for true change. And this is the Aquarius we talk about. Aquarius stage 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever. The out of the box mad scientist who, like Prometheus, is stealing fire from the heavens to bring change to creation. So if we jump to that space and fast forward to that way without first truly embodying and connecting to self, our own consciousness, our own mind, and using that as a vehicle to access higher mind, then we might just commit ourselves to some revolution that's not going to bring any change, even though we think that that's what's happening. So this is a wonderful time to say, what in this world do I want to change? I can look outside here. How? Why do I want it to change? And how can I bring a change that actually will bring a fix So, we're hearing a lot right now, impeach him, get that dude out of there. Well, then what? Well, then, I don't know. He's gone. Okay. Then what? First, have the vision and then arrange the things so it will manifest. It requires some time within. So in our survival cave, perhaps the Aquarian journey agent who went within to go without receives the revelation of ventilation coming back. Yo, it stinks in here. We need to have some cross ventilation. And they're like, what's that? Well, cut a hole in the cave right there and cut a hole in the cave up there. The air is going to blow through and it's going to be less stuffy, and we'll feel much more free. We'll have more experience of the outer world. By being here inside, we can actually access the outside. We just want to let the air flow. And what do the elders say about that? Like, no way, you're going to freeze us dead. Like, we've been doing it this way for tens of thousands of years. You don't cut holes in the survival cave, you idiot, Actually, I've seen the vision. This cross ventilation will warm the place amazingly. How many thousands of years might it take for that revolutionary to convince the traditions that this innovation is helpful? That resistance to change that can be so stuck in the set of tradition and culture is something that Aquarius wishes to resist. But if we just cut the holes in the middle of the night, we're probably not going to live long enough to see the results, yeah? So how can we find a way to convince the tradition, the culture, the programming that this change is beautiful, that this revelation will assist the evolution of culture itself? You're up against some serious business. And the invitation is to go within. The madness of the outer world that I wish to change is actually what I am meant to change in me. It is a mirror. It is an expression of my own discord. And if I can utilize that mirror to know myself and clean up on aisle self, when my own awareness and experience has been purified in this way, I will manifest a world that is more in tune with that which I wish to see. I have to be it to see it. Be the change, yeah, said Gandhi. All right. So let's look at some charts and play with some of the other notes of the celestial symphony and see how perhaps the other alignments of the wheels within wheels are sending us energy and encouragement and empowerment to participate with this Mars retrograde period for a couple months, or shadow period for 4 months. More than that, May 12th to October 8th. To receive encouragement for how we can choose change in us to bring change out there. So I want to say one more thing about that shadow idea. It's like this, but you saw in that video that I showed Mars's loop. I was first really tuned into the idea of loops, well, by Daniel Jamario at the Shamanic Astrology Mystery School, but then also by my friend and mentor, Gary Caton. Dreamastrologer.com is where you can find Gary. And these rare Northern Hemisphere Aquarian rising beings, who's said, hey, it's not just some line, friends. There's a dynamic motion. And I'm somewhat called to speak about this loop happening in the sign of Aquarius back to Capricorn and being hosted by the constellational goat. But I think that there's other branches I'd prefer to travel along, though they all emanate from the same trunk. Okay, yeah, let's look at some charts. So here we are, Mars retrograde, which is happening Pacific time where I live at 2:04:09 p.m. on Mars's day, Tuesday, June 26, 2018. And I find it amazing that this is the same time of Sun opposite Saturn. The full moon that's coming our way tomorrow is very strongly configured to Saturn. So how does Sun opposite Saturn participate with the initiation of the beginning of Mars stationing retrograde? So here's Mars retrograde, and very shortly thereafter, Sun opposite Saturn. And then a Capricorn full moon at Saturn. So the Capricorn full moon brings us back to the new moon, which was actually in Gemini. And this is how I like to play, not just with the moment in time of the chart. That's the frame of the film. Well, what is the scene? So I'll take Mars away for a second and say that, okay, this Sun-Saturn opposition, June 27th, Pacific times, about 6:30 a.m., brings me back to, well, when were Sun and Saturn conjoined? When was the seed planted that is now flowering at this opposition? And the answer is December solstice, December 21st, 2017, 0 degrees, 12 minutes Capricorn. Sun found alignment between Earth and Saturn, obviously activated by Earth's orbit, Saturn's orbit. But this is an amazing thing that the Saturn Cazimi was in Capricorn, and we'll have 3 of those. So some seed was planted at December solstice, where for me, and especially in our time where the solstice suns are aligned to the galactic cross, we're being asked to come back to an experience of wisdom, of cardinal directions, of the medicine wheel, of Earth, of the turning of the year, the reason for the seasons, the wisdom of Earth herself. I'll show you that seed that was planted with Sun and Saturn in the first degree of Capricorn on December solstice 2017, then sprouted with Sun square Saturn on March 29th. So very close to March equinox. And then Sun opposite Saturn, June 27th, very close to the June solstice. The closing square of their cycle will be Sun in Libra, September 25th, 2 days after the September equinox. And I share this because it's saying in so many ways that we're being asked and instructed by really the master of cycles of time, Saturn, in his dance with Sun and Earth now, to come back to the wisdom of the ages, the wisdom of the cycles, the turnings of the year, the seasons, to put our ears back to the ground, to witness the plants and the animals and tune into the language of nature. This to me is a very important devotion. You probably know this of me, is to re-nature astrology, reconnect these charts to the living sky and earth. And I very much believe Taurus, Uranus will bring empowerment or encouragement to astrology itself to come back to an earth astrology experience. But that's confirmed for me at this time with the Sun-Saturn cycle of this year being so strongly aligned to the solstice and equinox cross, the medicine wheel, and also to the galactic cross, which is more than we want to get into today. But I'm currently working on some videos about that, about the turning of the ages, about solstice galaxy alignment in our age and the rarity of that, and how that speaks to the principal astronomical happening of our time. What is the dawning of the age of Aquarius and when? So Aquarius, and in modern times, Uranus is associated with Aquarius, right? But in traditional times, it was Saturn. And we often associate Aquarius itself with astrology. Astrology, which when we play powerfully, is revelationary and revolutionary. And it's a way where we can access higher mind to receive that revelation, to bring revolution where? To the world, but what? Through self. So we astrologers, I think one of the reasons why we all have our own flavor, this isn't true for everyone. Some people just read the rules and do what their teacher told them to do. That's not an Aquarian thing. Some of us really want to break out of the box and find our own way. And typically it speaks to the way that we are personally astrologically wired, shown in our natal chart. Yeah, so there's a lot of symbols in my own nativity of, yeah, I should be an astrologer, but this is how I should astrologize, you know? Or I mentioned Gary Caton before, I mentioned John Dumas before, Rick Levine before, you know, so many different flavors of how we do astrology and how we commit our own energy to this beautiful craft of change. And so we find often that people will say, oh, I use this house system because it works. Well, typically that's because it works for me. And so I will, you know, bring that out to the community through my own perspective. You know, I'm a very cyclical based astrologer because it really speaks, you know, I'm kind of a eclipse fanatic because it really speaks in my own nativity. All right. So the Saturn Sun alignment at the time of Mars's retrograde in the sign of Aquarius. I think Mars in the sign of Aquarius, and especially given the truth, we'll look at this, but his alignments to Uranus in Taurus at this time. And the way that he aligns in some respects, and then also does not align to Saturn in Capricorn, speaks about the intent to revolutionize and express astrology itself, but by rewinding Mars retrograde, getting back into the old ways, and we look at these significators of the Aquarius mysteries, traditionally Saturn, now in Capricorn, and in more of a modern expression, Uranus now in Taurus, and I think they're both saying, Earth, your astrology, ground, your astrology. We measure astrology from the center of the earth. These charts are actually models for nature. And the more we can get outside and connect in that way, the more we will receive directly from our witness, our experience, our body, our earth, our embodiment, our sentient participation with the planets, with the stars, with the constellations, with the signs, the more we will serve a revolution that's coming from direct revelation. So an invitation you'll hear from me all the time, renature your astrology. And, you know, maybe I will share, not just to plug, but in service to this devotion, my Sacred Astronomy for Astrologers web course, which you can find at morethan astrology.com/sacredastro. It's currently being recreated. But the first 12 lessons, which are really about Earth, the cross of matter, are available for free. And I hope you'll play. I set it up like a online mystery school. So basically you'll find that all of these videos are password protected because you've got to play level 1 and answer the test question at the end of the first video, which is 7 minutes long. And that test question, the answer will be the password to the next video. I should say this, that one of the passwords is an American spelling of a word that's spelled differently in England and Australia and other places. So that's something I guess I should say in that video. But I hope you'll come play. You know, it's really about connecting the chart to the sky and coming first into our experience of it is Earth from which the tropical zodiac, yeah, Earth, really all of the zodiacs, but Earth-Sun relationship and the turning of the seasons that births tropical astrology, directional astrology. So I really feel strongly that Sun in Cancer opposite Saturn in Capricorn at this time, in their own alignments to Uranus and Taurus, and there's other happenings here. It says, come down to Earth, what's in the body, Earth, the water, the heart. So we see Sun in Cancer, we see Mercury in Cancer at the time of Mars's retrograde in Aquarius. And I think it speaks in some ways of the apparent division between mind and feelings. And we want to heal that. We want to nurture that. We want to give a safe space. Cancer, in many ways, through nurturing the body and the heart, allowing expression so that the mind and the heart can reconnect. And the Earth holds the keys to these mysteries. Jupiter in Scorpio at this time also speaks to this, I feel. So maybe before I go there, I'll talk about some fire. Moon's in Sagittarius. And why, you know, why does the sky rise and set? Why do we want change at all? There's a squirrel out here, a young one too, bearing a nut. It's kind of ahead of the clock, it seems. Chiron and Aries, the sign that's associated with Mars, one of the two, traditionally speaking, Jupiter and Scorpio, the other. Asking us to come in and heal and find the wisdom and compassionate expression of self. Because we don't have the roaring flames, which is Leo, without the spark. So Venus is currently in Leo. And let's break this down here really quick. We'll look at the fixed signs currently hosting the lunar nodes. South node Aquarius, north node Leo. Mars is very close at the time of the station. Here's Venus and Leo on the opposite side. Uranus in Taurus and Jupiter in Scorpio. Now, my orbs are not set so that we'll see a full square here because Uranus, the 2nd degree of Taurus, and Jupiter in the 14th degree of Scorpio, kind of out of orb. But you see a really strong connection between Venus and Jupiter. She's separating it, perfected a bit ago. And a very strong connection between Uranus and the nodes, and especially Mars and the nodes at this time. So I'll show you a couple of things in that regard. Venus opposed Mars on June solstice. There's the sun. I mean, 16 minutes Cancer. So shortly after sun activated June solstice, Venus and Mars were exactly opposite and very closely configured to the nodes. I want to show you as well. We'll look at a few things and then I'll do my best to attempt to narrate in English these celestial happenings. And on May 15th, when Uranus ingressed Taurus, Yeah, we'll be there for about 7 years, but not quite yet, because Uranus in August will station retrograde and return to Aries in November for a few months, coming back into Taurus to stay for almost 7 years. May 2019, no, March. But here's Uranus into Taurus, May 15th, 2018. Notice where Saturn was. I mean, this zone of the zodiac is the last degree of Capricorn, of course, but we were looking at that earlier with this idea of the shadow period for Mars's retrograde, right? And Mars ingressed Aquarius on this same day. So let me rewind a few days. And, you know, here's Mars, who's just like moving through Capricorn, about to square an Aries Uranus. But it didn't happen, the square, until Uranus ingressed Taurus, and Mars on the same day followed, perfecting that square from the sign of Aquarius. So what? So Earth, body, Taurus, the fruit and the flower that wants to be tasted and smelled and pollinated. It's necessary for the tree, species, you know. There's amazing things that are happening, like with this blood moon, where we have, it's a little bit loose because of where Jupiter is in the sign of Scorpio, 14th degree of Scorpio, now direct by the time of the total lunar eclipse on July 27th. Mars very close to the lunar nodes opposite the sun. Let's bring the moon in if we're speaking about a lunar eclipse. And on the square to Uranus. So it's a little bit loose. You know, I don't have my orbs set. If I set them to 11, 12 degrees, we would see the full cross here. But I'm very interested in where Venus is at the time of the coming blood moon in the sign of Virgo, again, more Earth. I'll show you that she's trine Pluto almost exactly at the time of the total lunar eclipse. Of course, Saturn in Capricorn, Uranus in Taurus, Earth, Earth, Earth. And I want to go back. We saw this Venus-Mars opposition exact on June solstice, 10th degree Leo, Aquarius, respectively. But that's the flowering of a seed that was planted with their conjunction on October 5th. Sorry, this will be their next one, August 24th, 2019, in the sign of Virgo. Their last one, also in the sign of Virgo, October 5th, 2017. 19 degrees, 13 minutes Virgo. We'll look at where Venus is at the time of the total lunar eclipse, aligned to Mars. 19 degrees, 25 minutes Virgo. I mean, right there. Earth, 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 Earth. Okay, so air, ups. Fire, ups. Water, downs. Earth, downs, right? The embodiment path into the body, which hosts the heart, is the way of the earth and the water. Involution, evolution, up and out, air and fire, which rise when released, while earth and water fall. We're seeing so many signatures, I feel, that support Mars's journey retrograde, beginning today in Aquarius, back to Capricorn, back into the earth. We're seeing symbols of Sun opposite Saturn now, Cancer Sun opposite Capricorn Saturn, a flower of a seed that was planted at December solstice in the 1st degree of Capricorn, Earth. We're seeing at the time of Mars's retrograde, it's a little bit looser now, but Leo Venus opposite Aquarius Mars, perfected at the solstice, the turning of the year, the medicine wheel. And it's a flower of a seed that was planted in October of 2017, Virgo, Earth. The mind is an incredible vehicle, but it often wishes to escape the embodiment path. The idea of ascension and going up to the heavens. sometimes feels as if it wishes to escape the path of embodiment. In so many of the planetary signatures, if we say Mars in Aquarius is ruled traditionally by Saturn, Capricorn now, Uranus in modern times, Taurus now, Earth. So coming into the body, coming into our physical experience, these things we can actually touch and drink, the wisdom of the plants, old teas, to help us in our meditation, not to run away from the moment now, embodying that moment to expand into infinity. What is time? There's really only one moment, but we experience time here for an important reason. And so Mars is not allowed, because of the beautiful happening of the planetary dance, to speed through Aquarius this time, at least from Earth's point of view. He's being asked to stop, slow down, calm the mind, come back into the earth, come into the body, and find here in our own personal temple that which wants to be shifted, changed, innovated, ventilated, so that we can come into a higher experience of self, to find a higher experience of the all, and bring that revelation to change us so we can change the world. Fix yourself to fix the world. So we could do this all day because there are many notes in the celestial symphony and the participation of amazing stars, yeah? But I want to look, I guess, only at one more cycle, because we're already 1,000,000 hours into this thing, right? Well, I'm going to look at one more cycle, and then we'll talk about these eclipses for just a minute. My minutes tend to be pretty long. So here's Mars, who today is stationing retrograde. He's not retrograde yet. He's still direct, and it looks as if he's applying. Mars moves faster than Jupiter, so Mars is applying to the Jupiter square. But it's not going to happen, because Mars stations retrograde will later station direct in the sign of Capricorn. Jupiter now direct in Scorpio. And I mean, let me show you another example. Just as Mars in Capricorn, who's at that time retrograde, this is August 26, 2018, applying to a conjunction with Pluto further out, but applying to a conjunction with Saturn and Capricorn. They're all cohabitating. It's not going to happen. Mars hits the brakes, turns around, and returns to direct motion. So these aspects do not perfect. And the same is true today with Mars and Jupiter square. I'll go back in time. Mars conjoined Jupiter on January 6, 2018. This is an amazing time. They were trine Sun, Venus, Pluto. Mercury and Saturn were aligned. Mercury, Saturn perfected some days later for their third exact conjunction within a few weeks. But this time of the Mars-Jupiter conjunction, and this very strong sextile in the sign of Scorpio, Mars and Jupiter, but receiving sextile light from Venus and the Sun, and sending sextile light to Pluto. Where? Earth, Capricorn. All right, so let's watch this dance, this cycle of Mars and Jupiter. They got their start where? In Scorpio, a sign in modern times that's often associated with Pluto, but traditionally with Mars. Yeah, so it's a very significant cycle. I mean, it won't always happen that in Jupiter's about year-long journey through Scorpio that will have a conjunction with Mars, because Mars's trip around is about 2 years. It happened this time. It happened on January 6th. It happened aligned by trine with Sun, Venus, Pluto, and Earth, Capricorn. And I'm just going to move. I'll do this by weeks. We'll actually speed it up. And watch Mars wax away from Jupiter. And you'll see here's the sextile. And they approach this square. Mars is applying. The faster planet activates the aspects. Mars is faster than Jupiter. 2 years around Jupiter, about 12. And here we're looking to perfect that square, not going to happen. Mars hits the brakes, turns retrograde. What does this mean? We say, I'll get back to what I feel, perhaps. But I also feel I have no idea. And that part of this Mars retrograde is for me to, in my own experience, help embody and understand this dance of Mars and Jupiter, which began in Scorpio. So all planets have their own cycles. And I always relate them to the principal phases of the moon, that the conjunction, new moon, is a seed, that the opening square, the waxing half moon, is the sprout, that the opposition, full moon, is the flower, that the third quarter, the waning half moon, is the fruit, which carries the seeds to be planted in the next cycle. It also must be composted for this to happen. So this seed of Mars and Jupiter is planted in Scorpio. And they say what? Get into the heart, the art of the heart. Fix yourself to fix the world through your authentic Scorpio, when not suppressed, because I can serve the suppressed to control me, or I can learn to control the expressed to serve me. Jupiter's opening that window into the things we've been taught by a crazy culture to suppress and hide. They're asking us to come into our personal power in the ways of our water, in the heart. And Mars is in many ways about that exhale, about that expression. Jupiter makes things big. So this cycle, which began January 6, 2018, of Mars and Jupiter, is very much tuned into the Scorpio mysteries. Scorpio, which traditionally is associated with Pluto, but I often ask this, like, what does Mars feel about having his nocturnal side, traditionally speaking, his feminine side, Scorpio, his nocturnal sign, taken away and given to this Pluto fellow that we'll never see with our eyes? We'll see it with spaceships. It might bring us back to Aquarius. Anyway, I'll just kind of fast forward through weeks at a time here. We'll see Mars wax away. And here's the time about of the sextile. This is April 21st. Mars in Capricorn, Jupiter in Scorpio. According to the old rules, there's generosity here. Scorpio traditionally ruled by Mars, and Mars said to be exalted in Capricorn. I don't know that that's necessarily, traditionally speaking, generosity, but let's not get hung up in the vocabulary and technicalities right now. Very importantly, Mars stations retrograde before the square is perfected. He'll come back to look at Jupiter from Capricorn and then heads along his merry way. And again, here, this is October 2018. Here's October 27th. We'll go another week, November 3rd. Do one more week. No. You can see Mars at this time in Aquarius, again, is applying to square Jupiter in Scorpio. Well, it's not going to happen. According to the old language, that aspect will not testify. Just like the current Mars-Jupiter square will not testify, because before it perfects, the planets leave the sign. Jupiter will ingress Sagittarius on November 9th. Looks like actually the 8th here in Seattle. And then Mars will ingress Pisces. And in these signs, what traditionally associated, the two traditionally associated with Jupiter, that's where the Mars-Jupiter square will perfect. That's where the Scorpio seed planted together by these two beings. On January 6th, 2017, it will sprout in this relationship of Pisces Mars, super close to his perihelion, by the way. And at this point in the Mars cycle, Mars is also moving pretty quickly. He's starting to. Jupiter moving super fast. And there's something to be said about the sprouting in mutable signs, or signs that are very tuned in, perhaps especially Jupiter's to Sagittarius and Pisces, to the spiritual quest. That there's something about going into the art of the heart and learning to control our expression for the sake of fixing ourselves to fix the world, that's going to assist the sprouting of seeds of why seeking Sagittarius. And this is why faith, Pisces. I'll continue on. That's November 19th, 2018. I'll show you that in their cycle, their opposition will be mutable. Mars in Gemini opposite, then retrograde Jupiter in Sagittarius. Their square as well, the closing square, the fruit of the cycle, also mutable. Mars in Virgo, interesting degrees that we've kind of been tuning into, courtesy of Venus and Mars. And here is this closing square, the fruit of the cycle. The next seed will be planted where? In Capricorn. At a really powerful time. This is March 20th, 2018, with Pluto and Saturn also in the sign of Capricorn at the time. And you'll hear astrologers speaking all about Capricorn and the conjunctions of Saturn with Pluto and Jupiter with Pluto and Mars with Jupiter and Mars with Pluto. Not Mars with Saturn, because Saturn will ingress Aquarius before that goes down. Not Jupiter with Saturn, because Jupiter will ingress Aquarius before that goes down. But there is a time when they're all aligned, very close to Capricorn, which also hosts the southern nodes of Jupiter and Saturn and Pluto, and we could go on in that way, and we will. But I want to bring it back. We'll bring all the planets in and bring in Chiron. And just look at the truth that we have a triple eclipse coming this summer. It's relatively rare, not like extremely, but you can't have solar lunar eclipses. You can only have a partial solar, lunar, and a partial solar. And they're always centered around a very strong and total lunar eclipse. It's also the end of one solar cycle and the beginning of another as far as Saros eclipse cycles and series go, and that's like another adventure altogether. But we'll just honor these archetypes here. We have a partial solar eclipse, 21 degrees, 21st degree Cancer, opposite Pluto in Capricorn. July 12th, 2018, the total lunar eclipse, July 27th, Sun in Leo, Moon, with retrograde Mars, squaring Taurus, Uranus, and a looser square to Jupiter and Scorpio, with that Venus trine Pluto we were looking at before. Mercury's in retrograde. I mean, there's so much to say about this lunar eclipse. I'll probably share a lot more later on, closer to the time. But this is part of Mars's mission right now. Somehow he's involved with the lunar nodes, which are the crossings of the moon and the sun's path. For me, my own personal cosmology, that's the place of the connection of soul and spirit, the reflection of the all and the all itself. There's something very key to Mars's intent to bring us into this. And look at this time, Mars, the eclipse is the 5th degree of Aquarius, and Mars at 3 degrees, 58 minutes Aquarius, very strongly, and because retrograde, applying to the perfect square with Uranus 231 Taurus at the time. Almost exactly partile, the same degree, semi-sextile Saturn. Now that's very interesting. Let me just strip this down for a second to this. Neighboring signs are said to be in aversion So it's an interesting happening when Saturn's in Aquarius, because traditionally speaking, he wants to see the teacher of that realm, which is Saturn, traditionally. And neighboring signs are said that they can't see one another in the tradition. There's a lot of beauty to this. There's a lot of challenge with it. And I found it to be a very productive tradition to kind of rephrase in my own modern approach. It's very much helped me kind of open into some hidden stories with clients, and especially with me, which is why I'm doing it, you know. But Mars wants to see Saturn and can't, according to the old ways. And we see this line drawn here in Intrepid, that's the semi-sextile. But traditionally speaking, that's not an aspect. There's no sight, there's no vision. So it's interesting that Saturn or Mars will return to Capricorn, actually return to his degree of exaltation, where he'll station direct in August, about a month after this, right? But there's a thing that I love to do, which is, okay, well, if planets can't see one another, and especially in this case where Mars in Aquarius wants to see Saturn from a traditional point of view, we look for another being who can see them both. And Uranus plays this part. Usually I'll look to visible planets, but right now we're going to do it this way. So let me just play for you a semi-sextile. In my map of the 12 signs to the 12 Pythagorean keys, or notes of an octave, Aquarius resides at G, and Sagittarius at F sharp. Yikes! All right, well, let me bring this now into Aquarius G for my map in Taurus, where Uranus is B flat. This is a square. It's called musically a minor third. Whereas Saturn in Capricorn on my map, G flat or F sharp. In Taurus, B flat is a major third. Okay, so you got the square, minor, sad, and the trine, same element, right? Major, bright, happy. But let me play for you. This is the grand trine. It's too bright. When we create major chords, it's actually consists, I'll speak astrologically, of a trine and a square. That's called a major triad. A minor triad of a square and a trine. Feels out of tune. Let me play that in another place. Here's the minor triad and the major triad. So the minor triad is square trine, and the major triad is trine square. There's something about the gift of tension, and we can really explore this with our body-mind in musical harmony, in geometry. This is why I teach through the quadrivium, through astrology. I teach astrology first through geometry, musical harmony, astronomy, because it helps us have a sentient, embodied, earthly experience of the thing, you see. So there's something about Saturn and Mars, who from this traditional point of view are disconnected at this time of the eclipse, and especially because Mars wants to see Saturn in this way. But Uranus helps them relate. Where's the tension? It's in this square. Mars square Uranus. So in a modern time, you say, okay, Uranus is Aquarius. What's up with Mars squaring Uranus in Taurus? Are we saying, well, Mars is like, yo, how you feeling in Taurus, dude? Is that how you roll? I heard you're all about expansion and innovation. Is that about Earth? And Uranus says, right now, I guess it is, you know? Especially because Uranus and Saturn, the trine, the major relationship, the bright relationship, same element. They're like, it's about the Earth. And it's just another indication that the way that we're invited to most profoundly play with this Mars retrograde period is to get into the body. The breath is a vehicle. The heartbeat is the drum, you know? All right. So we want to work out some of this tension, not only between Mars and Uranus in this square, but by the lunar eclipse, the lunar nodes in this square. That's where the action, and Jupiter is participating in a grand fixed square, grand cross, you know, the fix yourself to fix the world signs. Well, Saturn's in a sign of the world, you know, in Capricorn, the mountain itself, not just the goat that climbs it. And he's showing us the release. And I believe Saturn also retrograde at the time of the lunar eclipse. He's saying, go back to the old ways of Earth. Listen to the voice of your mother. Your bones are her stones. Reconnect to the directions. Here he is, so close to not only the galactic cross, but the cross of the medicine wheel, which is the direction south, where Capricorn begins, tropically speaking. The total lunar eclipse will be followed by another partial solar eclipse, which is in the sign of Leo. So we have partial solar eclipse in Cancer, total lunar eclipse in Aquarius, the sun in Leo, and then a partial solar eclipse in Leo. It's a significant eclipse season. Notice that Mars is in the first degree of Aquarius retrograde at this point, which means basically the next day, it's 2 days later, it's really the next day in the evening, Mars will return to the sign of Capricorn. Virgo moon, Earth. We're really being asked to come into the body, to come into the heart. This, I think, is principally the function of Jupiter right now, who at the time of Mars's return to Capricorn, or I could get back to this, the partial solar eclipse in Leo. Look at how Mercury retrograde in Leo is exactly square Jupiter in Scorpio, heart. So I'm going to share this thing. Where is the buttons? Body. morethan.astrology.com/sacredastro. 12 free lessons. I hope you'll check them out. And then I hope you'll choose to continue from Earth to the sun, then the stars, then the moon, and much more. All right. There's 12 lessons free. And in all, there will be 72 before it's said and done. This is the website for Organization for Professional Astrology, opaastrology.com. I'm just clicking here, iAstrologer, which you can read all about. It's an amazing retreat that's going to happen in Tucson, Arizona in October. And OPA has made part of their certification astronomy for astrologers, which I'm so stoked about. I believe actually that this Sun-Saturn cycles stationed, well, centered, seated in Capricorn, and especially this one in 2017, which is at the medicine wheel, the Cazimi on December solstice 2017. That's the cycle we're in now. Saturn at the galactic cross. It's Uranus in Taurus. I really believe we'll see more of the organization saying part of certification is going to be understanding the nature side, which we call astronomy. I'm also super stoked because OPA's bringing me down to teach astronomy for astrologers. So there will be a 3-day intensive in the classroom with a lot of these animations that I create, so we can experience and witness the heavenly happenings on the little screen, but then we're going to go outside and we'll see every visible planet at this time on the big screen and integrate what we're learning in the classroom. We'll also be outside during the day and building medicine wheels and sundials and working with our shadow to understand the motions. I don't teach this in some super geek way. I do, and through embodiment, through physical structure, through physical practice. So I hope you'll come play. iAstrologer has a part 1. Check it out at opaastrology.com. But I also wanted to show you that at OPA, sorry, let me finish that thread. Part 2 is October 7th through the 10th, 7th through the 11th, really. I guess 8th through the 11th, but we'll begin on the night of Sunday, October 7th, for people who want to show up early and check into the beautiful hotel and hang out under the sky. It's about new moon time, dark skies, all the planets visible. Be the last days of Venus's visibility from these latitudes of Tucson, Arizona. Anyway, I hope you'll come. Check it out. So also at OPA, you will find a publications tab in their free and amazing Career Astrologer Quarterly Magazine. If you're a member of OPA, something I highly recommend, then you receive the release of the seasonal magazine before it's made public. So here's 2018 March equinox. I wrote an article in that one about, no, I didn't. I wrote an article in this December solstice edition about the prophecy of Prometheus and the elements and all sorts of things. But starting with this March equinox edition, I've started a quarterly column about astronomy for astrologers. So I hope you'll check that out. If you're a member of OPA, you've already received this, which is the June solstice edition. And I imagine this is going to come out publicly very soon. I'll make sure to share it on my page when it does. But the themes are Mars retrograde in Aquarius and the fixed cross eclipse and the triple eclipse season. This article by Maurice is amazing. I just saw him speak about Mars retrograde and eclipses here in Seattle. Sandra Lee Serio, and I haven't read this yet, but I'm very excited to connect to Adam Gainsbourg's article and to Maggie Kerr's article. I haven't yet got to meet Maggie, but I'm always expanded through her writing. Let's blow this thing up a little bit. There's also in this magazine some ceremonial suggestions for connecting to the eclipses. So here we see ritual suggestions for the eclipses, and Maurice wrote a thing, and Adam wrote a thing, Sandra Lee wrote a thing, and I did. Oh look, an article by Kate Botcha as well. So check out the Career Astrologer. I'll just pause this here for a second. And you can have a read if you'd like, or take a screenshot. Let's make that just a little bit bigger. All right. It's kind of a creative, playful way, and hopefully in tribe, family, community, Cancer, you see, for revolution, Aquarius, artistically Leo, honoring the archetypes, is my ceremonial suggestion, which is also involves burning and earning, URN. So I'll leave that up. You can take a screenshot if you want to read it. Check out Adam's suggestion as well. And I'll play a little music and we'll take this long journey out. Thank you for your presence and your participation here live on Facebook. I think I'll post this one to YouTube also, so you might be watching it in the future. But what is time? Time is money. No, it's not. But money's a thing. And if you feel like sending along something for what you have received here, giving back, you'll find a donate button at morethanastrology.com. All donations so gratefully received, in no way expected. I was saying that when I was sharing regularly a while ago, and people said I stopped watching your shares because I don't have any money to donate right now. It's like, that's not what I'm saying, you know? But if you're feeling it, if you're in a space where you can give back a bit, I sure would appreciate it. I went for my own Aquarian revolution and quit the so-called day job and went full-time astrologer, and it's been great, you know. So a lot of folks have sent donations my way, and I very much appreciate it. Another way you can donate, in a sense, is to share this video around. Give it a like, you know, that helps with the algorithms and such, and I would appreciate that. But the thing that I would appreciate more than anything at all is if you accept the invitation to get outside and experience Mars and Jupiter and Saturn and Venus and Sun and Moon and Mercury, when he rarely makes himself available to your view, and these stars and signs and constellations with your eyes and your heart. See ya in space, friends.